How do we know if we are ready to export? Is there any sort of checklist for becoming ready to export, and how would we know if we're ready to move forward?
So I know in our area, the local small business development and technology centers, they have an export readiness checklist that companies can go through, and they can check off and say, you know, this is these are the best practices if your company is looking to go international. And so basically through the SBDCs, whenever a company is new to export, so 20 of the clients that we've been working with, when we determine, yes, through our assessment, if they're ready to export, we then refer them to the SBDC, they get their training, and then they go through that checklist. And I don't know if they do anything, if you guys do anything different in Des Moines, Ryan, but really that's what we do here. I asked, one of my first questions is like, well, has an export client already contacted you? If that's the case, then obviously they might be, they might have an export ready product. And then it's just about the company making sure they have the right price point, making sure they're working with the right freight forwarder, making sure they, you know, have the right financial documents, if they need a letter of credit, you know, that kind of thing as it relates to exporting itself. Does Brookings have any recommendations for a company if they're to know if they're ready to export or not? I've never asked you guys that question.
That's a great, well, I'll let Ryan answer first about how Des Moines approaches that question.
Yeah, ours is very, very similar to what you're doing. I agree. We pass them along to the proper channel or the proper partner. They go through that very easily. It's no fee or no charge to them to do, and it's very seamless. So it's been very effective.
So from our perspective, there are a couple of characteristics, obvious characteristics, and Ivory, you mentioned one of them, which is just, do you have a tradable good or service? And then move from that point in terms of what's your capacity for growth, where the appropriate markets might be. But that's an evaluation that you do with someone who, like yourselves or your network, can sit down and craft a business plan, an international business plan, or an evaluation first with that individual firm. So they can obviously go to lots of different support providers. One of the interesting things that we see in the case of Kansas City and Des Moines and others is the integration of the support systems and the navigation, the concierge model, the navigation of the different support providers, because so many firms find that these are fragmented systems, that they'll go in one place and then be referred to another, or they can't get what they want, and that provider is not certain or not incentivized to refer them to someone else who could be more helpful. So that strategy of integrating these kinds of assessments and support providers is very common in all of the markets that we're working with. I think the other interesting part of this, though, is how to be more proactive about reaching firms rather than a firm saying, hey, I'm thinking about exporting, where do I start? And we've seen that in a number of different markets that focus in on where they think there are export-ready industries or clusters of firms that they can reach through associations or through their ongoing BRE relationships. They know they have a cluster strength, and then they go to those firms in that sector and try to gin up the interest and target supports to them and a link to an international marketplace. So it's working through some of the sectoral trade organizations that, and as Ryan mentioned, focusing in on where you really know you have strengths and market potential for firms that are in that mid-size or some smaller category that wouldn't necessarily be thinking about exporting first, then reach them and go through this process using that aggregation technique of industries that you think make a lot of sense for international trade.